the Masterpiece Society. The Enterprise has to save a colony that has been completely sealed off from the outside.
The Enterprise contacts a colony that is about to be destroyed by the passing of a star fragment.
They can't figure out how the people got there because there's not supposed to be anyone living there, and Picard warns their leader, Connor, about the fragment.
But he says the inhabitants don't want outside contact, and that they don't want to be evacuated because their environment is sealed.
Connor is played by John Snyder, who we saw previously in The Enemy as Bakra, that actor we thought was not very good, who used his mouth way too much. And after saying their colony is sealed, Picard very smugly tells them that the Enterprise has transporter capabilities.
Connor still declines to have his people evacuated, but agrees to allow the beaming in of an away team.
And even that decision is a contentious one. They say they've been bred to evolve beyond all other humans, and also to achieve full integration with their environment.
Whatever that means.
And every person has been bred to fill a specific role in their society. And clearly this is shown by their art sense, because look at that modern art. So beautiful.
Troy seems completely baffled by the idea of a genetically engineered people, which was kind of stupid, given that they already dealt with things like this in Up the Long Ladder. Connor's aide Martin is played by Ron Canada, who I knew from Adventures in Babysitting and the Nick Fury Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. movie.
When was that made?
I think it was 98.
Was that live action?
Yeah, with David Hasselhoff.
It sounds like it would be a parody movie.
It was decent. It was much better than I would have expected. Connor gives them a whole lecture about how they are tied into everything in their environment because the Force.
Every plant life, every microscopic life form.
The tree, the rock, everywhere.
Is a part of the master design.
In their science station, they meet Hannah, who works with Geordi on coming up with a solution to the core fragment problem.
When Troy says she would like to stay to get more of a tour with Connor, Riker tries to pretend he's not upset when he beams back.
And as they're walking, she asks about unexpected events and how the society deals with it, and Connor says that doesn't happen, which is pretty dumb. Nobody says, I planned on this accident happening.
Nobody ever trips and hurts themselves. Nothing breaks or goes wrong or anything like that.
And they're hardcore flirting through the entire conversation.
Hannah questions Geordi about the Enterprise. She has an idea to build a super mega hyper tractor beam to change the path of the fragment, but she says she would need the Enterprise to power it.
She gets permission to go up to the ship, and they spend the next 3 days working on her plan. And for some reason, it's just those two. They have whole teams of engineers. We've seen Geordi sit down and have discussion with multiple people. I don't understand why they didn't do that this time.
And Martin objected to her going to the Enterprise because he said it would throw off the balance of the planet. But they're all gonna die, A. And B, she's only gonna be gone for a little while. And C, couldn't she have just stayed on the planet and communicated with Geordi from there anyway?
While discussing possible evacuation, Troy says they probably can't get all the people to change their minds, and Picard lets his feelings be known about genetic engineering.
He speaks in absolutes.
It was a bad idea whose time is long past. Self-discovery, the unknown. These are many of the qualities that make life worth living.
Troy says Connor seems open to suggestions, so Picard tells her if she can convince him, others will follow.
And he seems to get jealous when she talks about how good of a leader Connor is.
Geordi and Hannah aren't having any luck, and the conversation turns to Geordi's blindness.
Guess if I had been conceived on your world, I wouldn't even be here now, would I?
She asks to see his visor, and he tells her how it works. And as he's explaining it, he realizes they can use the same technique for their tractor beam.
On the planet, Troy sits with a bunch of other people listening to a 6-year-old play a piano.
I assume the kid was bred specifically to play the piano, but it showed they obviously need to do more work because it was extremely mechanical playing. Although he was able to keep playing through an earthquake, so that was pretty impressive.
Would that make it technically better, though, if he's, perfectly on time?
Data has had this discussion with Picard already. Obviously, you haven't been watching this show.
Yeah, but it's subjective. From their perspective of doing everything perfectly, maybe he's playing it perfectly.
No.
Troy walks off and talks to Connor, who says any small change to something can cause it to completely fall apart.
And she asks a very simple question: could they just re-engineer everything somewhere else? And Connor answers with an equally simple answer.
All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again.
And then they make out, which Troy says is wrong, but I don't see why.
And it was nice they had that romantic, mechanical piano music in the background.
Geordi and Hannah talk to Picard and Riker about their plan.
Moving the fragment is only part of the solution. They also need to increase the biosphere shield strength.
Troi tells Connor she's going back to the Enterprise because staying with him is wrong.
It's very dramatic.
Needlessly so. Troi says that adding half Betazoid DNA to their gene pool would violate their rules, but they said that they genetically screen for imperfections. And I guess it's true that they would need to understand Betazoid genes, but that doesn't seem to be the problem, so it didn't make sense.
Hannah and Geordi beam down and let Connor know they need to bring down 50 more people to help increase the shields, and Connor reluctantly agrees. And those people were ready right away. I like to think what would have happened if Connor said no, and all those people were left standing on transporter pads looking like idiots.
And once everything is set, Geordi and Hannah begin trying to alter the fragment's course.
It's working, but it's pushing the Enterprise to its limits, and they start to lose life support, and they only have 5 seconds before everybody dies.
But then it works.
I was on the edge of my seat.
Connor congratulates them. Hannah seems troubled for no reason other than to make you stick around to see what happened after the commercial break.
The engineering crews are beaming back up, but suddenly alarms go off, and Hannah says there's a breach in the sphere.
And they're all going to die. Hannah tries to work with Geordi on a solution, but he reveals that his visor tells him she has lied about there being a breach.
Yeah, remember his visor can tell if people are lying, but ironically he uses a different function to tell that she's lying.
My visor's positronic scan would have detected the leak.
And it's revealed that she just wants to leave the colony.
Because she is now intrigued by the outside world.
The crew has a meeting about it, and it turns out Hannah is not the only one who wants to leave.
Geordi supports granting asylum to anyone who wants to leave, but Troi says it would cause their entire society to collapse because crucial roles would no longer be filled. I was glad they didn't all agree, and I actually enjoyed the discussion.
It was okay.
Okay.
Picard ultimately decides to go down himself to talk to Connor, and in the turbolift, Troi tells him about their relationship.
Down on the planet, we see that they have the same egg lights that everyone else seems to have, so I guess no one on this planet could invent anything better either.
Yes, they have reached peak illumination evolution. Picard and Connor weigh the pros and cons of letting people leave or not.
Connor says he sympathizes with Hannah, but it is his role to keep their society together, and his decisions have already potentially caused its collapse. He begs Picard to help him, with the implication being that he will refuse to transport anyone off the planet.
And Picard says he'll talk to the people, but ultimately, if they want to leave, he's not going to turn them down.
They have a public discourse in a very impractical location with a bunch of pillars in the way.
It was representative of the pillars of their society. The discussion gets pretty heated, but in the end, some of the colonists opt to leave.
And again, I thought their argument was pretty good.
It was okay. Later, Connor tells Troi his feelings before walking away, and that's that. What a great and substantial subplot that really went somewhere.
Picard talks to Riker about how they were essentially violating the Prime Directive by disturbing the planet's society, and how in saving them from the star fragment, they caused their own share of damage.
The Masterpiece Society. Overall,
we've seen the show tackle similar ideas to the ones presented in this episode before, and at first I thought it would handle things in a generic, boring way, but I really liked the arguments in this episode. Both sides made sense and had valid reasons for feeling the way they did, but my problem was that we never actually see how the society operates. So the sense that it will collapse never quite feels as weighty as it should. They just kind of tell us that it will collapse. The Troi stuff didn't really make sense. I thought the relationship was poorly developed. The problem with her being with him didn't really make sense either. Her main issue seemed to be that if they have kids, they wouldn't fit in with the rest of the society. But the people seemed completely okay with abortion, so that's an option, potentially. Or they could just use protection. Or even if Troi does have kids, just have them be taken off planet to a space orphanage. Or Troi could go back and forth to another planet and raise her kids there. But they tried to simplify things to the point that they didn't really make sense anymore. The B-plot about the star was just a catalyst for everything, so any of the scenes dealing with that weren't very interesting and played out very predictably, especially that one that was supposed to be super tense where you're wondering if the plan's going to work, but obviously it's going to work. I thought the episode would have been a lot better if they had spent more time with the discussions instead of wasting time on the star stuff. I thought the episode had good ideas, but they needed to develop the planet more.
What are you talking about? It was evolved to its peak.
They needed to fix the Troi stuff, And they needed to let the ideas speak for themselves a little bit more, because that didn't really happen until the last third, and that's the stuff that I thought was really good. I did like the ending, which was refreshingly self-reflective, honest, and thought-provoking. I gave it a B-.
I gave it a B- also. I wish there had been an actual breach after they quote-unquote fixed everything. It would have created an interesting development into forcing them into a decision. This is one of those episodes where they try to use the Prime Directive as a major plot device, but they've shattered that principle so many times in this show, it doesn't hold as much weight as it once did. It hurts their arguments.
Yeah, their guilt feels a little bit out of place given how flippant they've been about it before.
If the colonists were not human, would the crew's arguments have been the same about genetic engineering and interfering?
That's going too deep into something that doesn't warrant it.
You just went into a whole novel about Troy's romance. I mean, I'm already getting emails from Harper Press asking to publish it. I was also confused about their evolving to achieve full integration with their environment. What does that mean? Just that there's nothing there that can kill them? We didn't make any lines here. It's a masterpiece society.
It made me think of Avatar with the way they kind of tie into the trees or whatever they do. It's been a while since I've seen that movie.
And this episode also could have used a psychotic military dude in a giant exosuit shooting rockets at people. I'm pretty sure that's what happened. It's been a long time. Everybody was so smug about everything. Picard with his transporters, and Connor with his genetic engineering, and Matthew with his piano playing. Get over yourselves. Hitting the abortion issue button for 5 seconds and then walking away from it was a little bit weird. Okay, let's think of a good way to finish this one.
Like and subscribe.
So clearly, the writing on this show still needs to evolve a little bit.
It has not quite reached masterpiece level.